This, I'm not going to call it a presentation, but let's say this investigation, I've often used the term before, sort of Methodos, or this way. So I'm kind of transferring meaning from phenomenology in Heidegger's sense, where he says, unlike physics, unlike biology, unlike history, there's no particular subject matter to phenomenology, but phenomenology is just a method as such. Direct investigation is the implication, or what I infer from that. So then I'm just calling this an investigation in that sense. So the themes I'm gonna try to do this Goethean. This is the problem. You want to build a beautiful crystal that sparkles, but you could easily just create a tangle rather than a clue. So I want to bring together a bunch of themes, and I'm just going to list them first. One, accelerationism. Two, the juxtaposition of accelerationism and Ludditism as against the juxtaposition of right and left. Three, the technological essence. Four, the question of the wearing out of terms and words. That's already extremely subtle issues are there, and then we're justified in quoting Goethe, as Freud liked to quote him, to say that all unseen, the strings are tied together in infinite combination forms. In other words, I've already explained sort of how this whole talk is lit, but now I'm going to say something that's to some won't be obviously connected to it. So Dostoevsky has said, when faced with the kind of hall monitor type of young editor, he says to her, listen, every genuine writer has their own style and therefore their own grammar. But this is the difficulty of the notion of a genius as one in a million. It could be understood either as the genius is someone who's sick in the sense of the Aristotelian sense of missing the target, but only closer to the actual target than most everyone else. Or it could be understood in the romantic way, in the Triebnach und Endlichkeit way, to say there's just an endless number of selection of possible ways that one can present themselves as a genuine leader in the table of Virta, or the table of values, as Nietzsche put it. So there's the question I want to ask is, and then of course you could see how that could be transferred to an artist in another way. What's their aesthetic? What's their mood? What's their feeling about what beauty is, et cetera, et cetera. And then each artist is supposed to have their own aesthetic. Each artist, and it's endless, endless different forms, and it never. And this is how Pope Francis understood Nietzsche, pretty much. And it's also how the Bertold Niebuhr, in Nietzsche's famous Noctale essay on the uses of history for life, which for me rhymes and echoes with Schmidt in a certain sense, because Schmidt is saying that the genuine constitution in the Nazi handbook says what's lawful is what's useful for the Germans, for the folk. That's a complex interaction right there, but that's just between the Schmidt and Nietzsche. But anyway, let's just look at a clearer thesis. So the clearer thesis is what the change in the highest stone table of values, when you put your feet on the ground, is that accelerationism replaces progressivism. So the progressivism is sort of the degenerate form of what we could have understood at an early form of the rivalry between the Bank of England, um, which is founded by the nobles, and sort of the concentric circles going out from the absolute estate, as it were. But only the metaphor carried over to England. But in the same way as, because we're jumping back and forth, so it's true that in a way, only at the time of 1789, the French Revolution, do we actually get the left and right embodied in the Revolutionary Court, where Danton has to be has his head taken off and so on, in the famous German play from around the time of von Kleist. Unlike von Kleist, it's a more thick-skinned play. But in any case, Danton is dead. It's from that time that we literally get the left-right speech. Of course, that's true, but we could project it back into the struggle between King and Alter and the Bank of England, where then we see sort of on the side of the Bank of England is the Magna Carta, or the I think David Cameron failed to answer that on David Letterman. He didn't know what Magna Carta meant, the Great Charter. And this struggle, Leo Strauss gives abstract definition to by saying it's the conservative powers. So he's kind of points to the Burke as the first liberal, the conservative liberal, against. So this is when this Verta or Worths, this sort of weighing, somebody's going around weighing everything, in the sense that lawyers talk about weighing an issue, and they've determined these are this is the issue that has the most weight, this left-right division, as again, and it originally concretely has this sense of the throne and altar as against economic or market propaganda, which was then, I think only then the physiocrats are beginning to rise up, and they're totally alien to our current way of thinking about economy. But, and Agamben has said many interesting things on that subject, I say in parentheses. But so, yeah, that's what I'm trying to thematize, is accelerationism as against Ludditism has replaced, so Peter Thiel, for instance, has replaced the right-left distinction. But this is simply to understand it in terms of this Nietzschean change in the highest table of values, and the way we're weighing things, and the importance of things, and the importance of how to control direction of things. At one time it had a concrete meaning in the political struggle as Schmitt demands, but over hundreds of years it has taken on very many meanings. So this is the second theme I want to bring in. What is accelerationism? So immediately, once a term which originally has a sort of a maybe ambiguous, because the reality is ambiguous, but clear more or less to the people who are thematizing it to themselves. And so it basically means there's some Luddites, there's some accelerationists. The accelerationists are the one who say, let's not worry about the AI killing us, let's just go further into it and faster. And this goes back to Harold Lasswell and to Leo Strauss's time. But then we get all kinds of wrinkles. So because there's a 764 accelerationist terrorist group who have a kind of manifestos and who say we are accelerationists, and because Dugan has taken opinions on it and said, okay, Peter Thiel is a self-professed accelerationist of a different stamp, and he says, but Dugan sort of likes Peter Thiel, so then he says, how can we understand this blackness as thick as velvet in a way that won't be black as pitch? Somehow there's two levels to the blackness. And then he says he's an Agori. He's actually an Agori. So the Agoris, though they appear to be satanic, actually turn out not to be satanic in some sense. They're actually aiding in the struggle, in the karmic struggle, or the to bring about the Kali Yuga or whatever. So once a term becomes prominent in some way, the danger is always it will be worn out rapidly. It will be destroyed. It will lose any a real direct sense. And so I think this process has already begun, because there's a propaganda word that says 764 accelerationists are actually what they mean by accelerate is to accelerate the end of the United States. So that's a kind of an ad hoc social media transformation, which seems to be probably funded by I don't know, somebody who's on the side of the spirit of Davos, as Wallerstein called it, and somebody who's against Russia. So Russia comes in, so their theme is Russia comes in, creates this new theme of accelerationism, understood as the destruction of the United States and the evil empire, turning back the rhetoric of George Bush. And then you get the different meaning of accelerationism, and then somebody else understands accelerationism literally to mean as in celerity, as in the great celerity of a runner or of a rocket or something. Oh, we could move faster somehow. The Earth could spin faster or something. But then the whole thing breaks down into the cave, and you get this raw insanity. And yet somehow there's always this pushback against insanity in certain corners, and certain people claim to lay hold to the true understanding of it. And then you could look at the history and the etymology, and you could do all kinds of things of this nature. And the end result of it is looking at the influences that it has. You end by thinking something along the sense of this is a real question, that in order to get out of the sort of mosh pit of that confusion, somebody might actually think it's better to literally do this kind of accelerationism. It becomes a rational point in the sense that Leo Strauss says faith becomes rational once you see that the Greek arche of episteme runs out when it comes to the situation where it could only describe what happens. It will only describe how to build technology, and it can no longer say anything about the higher tablet of values, as we're saying, the orientation about how to move forward or move back. Once it can no longer say anything about that great orientation, which is trying to thematize the move from right-left to Luddite accelerationist, but then to see the difficulty in how to understand Luddite to accelerationist. We could see what the cave means then. I think that's a good entrance into what the cave means.